Hello, it's Seb, and yes, I still haven't done my best of 2025 video. That'll be coming up next, I promise. But in the meantime, I just have to talk about the Odyssey trailer that dropped. I talk about Greek myth a lot on this channel, and I'm kind of flirting with talking about book-related movies, so this feels like appropriate, and also it's quite an interesting trailer, I think, in many ways. So I want to respond to the trailer, but also I want to respond to this video put out by Cinzia at Lady at the Library. Very thoughtful, extremely interesting. I'll link it down in the description below. I think we probably have quite similar expectations about this film based on the trailer, but there were a lot of things in her reasoning which I kind of didn't agree with or wanted to push back on, so I'm just going to vent a little bit here. First of all, I think it has to be said, the trailer looks quite a lot like AI, and not because like people are melting or the shadows are being cast in the wrong places or anything like that, but it's just, I guess, the idea of Christopher Nolan making the Odyssey already sounds like a bit like a joke. So when you watch the trailer, it's like somebody typed in somewhere, the Odyssey, but directed by Christopher Nolan, and starring A, B, C, and D, all these, random A-listing Hollywood people. Like when we cut to Tom Holland as Telemachus, looking at Anne Hathaway as Penelope, there's something kind of surreal about that. Like someone has just said, let's put these famous faces into this unlikely situation. And yeah, while of course it's also true that AI has rotted our brains to the point that we are skeptical of basically everything we see, I also think it's something to do with the fact that the Odyssey and Christopher Nolan seem like such an unlikely and unnecessary matchup. There are also certain points that seem like a little bit weird or off, like, AI was mining other movies to make this without doing the kind of obvious thought processes that a human would. For example, it's the Odyssey, it's, Greek mythology, but it seems to be set in Northern Europe, right? And apparently it was shot there. But everything looks dark, everything looks cold. We see snowflakes, we see like fir trees, it does not look Mediterranean. Also, this now infamous shot of the sci-fi looking kind of sculpted black armor that we see on a person who might be Agamemnon, but which I see the internet has dubbed Batgamemnon, which, it's solid mid-tier meme material, I think. So, props for that. But yeah, it looks like what a machine would think a Christopher Nolan version of the Odyssey would look like, which is even more Christopher Nolan-y than I would have guessed when I first heard about this ridiculous matchup. And the cast as well, when I saw the cast, Matt Damon as Odysseus. Matt Damon as Odysseus. It just sounds so bad, but like, I don't know. After watching the trailer, I'm kind of torn between wanting to be excited for it and wanting to hate it, which is interesting. At the moment, I'm just kind of bemused, not really sure how I feel, because part of me is, I guess a bit nostalgic for the time when I would have been really excited to see this. Like, in the mid-2000s when The Dark Knight came out, and the idea of injecting that darkness, grittiness, seriousness into something that had become as camp and fun in popular culture as Batman was so refreshing and new, right? And also the Marvel movies, Iron Man had come out and it was like, what is this? It's it's wry, it's cynical, but it's also kind of serious and it's fun. And there was this, it was something so refreshing about that, which is now not refreshing at all. We don't need this stuff now. We're saturated in it. I'm personally kind of done with Christopher Nolan. Like the Memento and The Dark Knight, that's it. That's all you need. But aside from the popular culture landscape, back then I was also a teenager, so I was just like more inclined to get hyped for epic shit. And I kind of miss that. Like I want to get hyped for this because, it's the Odyssey, and it's a big, they're pouring so much money into one of the most famous Greek myths, and I like Greek myth retellings. Like, I always want to give a Greek myth retelling a chance no matter what, basically. So I'm a little torn on this one. So now I want to talk a bit about the points that Cinzia brings up in her video, where she's basically responding to the people who are defending this trailer by saying it's fantasy, so anything goes. You can have Batman helmets, you can have Scandinavian forest, it doesn't matter, it's fantasy, it's not history, right? So stop complaining about things looking inaccurate. Like, apparently the ships are also like Viking ships. I mean, it is kind of ridiculous. Cinzia draws a distinction between myth and fantasy here, saying that basically myth is something which is derived from a particular culture, a particular people, their beliefs, their civilization, their gods, and so on, right? So it's not the same as fantasy. And so, a work representing that, a particular myth, should also represent those people. For me, like, there's something inherently a little bit strange about this, I think, because like fantasy is also a product of a certain people and a certain time and culture and place. So I don't really want to get into the nitty-gritty of what is the difference between fantasy and myth. That might be a fun thing to talk about down in the comments. But just I kind of feel like the idea that, you know, one is grounded in culture and people and so on is, and the other is not, seems a bit off to me. Like the Lord of the Rings is an invention, sure, from like an individual's mind, but it is also a product of, you know, Christianity and two world wars and, you know, what is going on in England and the cultural milieu in the West in the mid 20th century. But to be fair, like the focus here is not about like themes and plot stuff. It's more about the material world or how that's represented, right? So like Cinzia talks about the armor in Troy, right? Like the Brad Pitt Troy, right? As being historically inaccurate, like not what the Mycenaean people would have worn at all, but that she prefers those visuals because they don't look out of place, as she says. They look like they could have been wearing them at that time. So she much prefers that sort of aesthetic compared to what we're seeing in the Christopher Nolan trailer for the Odyssey with all the sci-fi Batman stuff. And to me, this gets at kind of the heart of what I find interesting about this, because it means it's about vibes, right? It's not actually the anachronisms which bother a lot of people when they see the Odyssey trailer. It's more the vibes. It's the feeling that this doesn't belong in my image of what the ancient Greeks should look like. And I think that's totally fair, by the way, for people to hold that opinion. I just think it's important to distinguish the fact that it's more about vibes and not about authenticity. Like the popular image of the Greek myths as exists in the, you know, the heads of people around the world right now has been shaped by thousands of years of retelling, right? By different people and different civilizations. And in many ways, they're not reflective of Mycenaean Greece or even Greece at all in some cases. Like take the name Achilles, right? Achilles is Roman. It's a Romanization or a Latinization of Achilleos. But Achilles just sounds right. We all know he's Achilles. Same with Apollo, right? Apollo is the Latinization of Apollon, or there's different ways to say it in the different ancient Greeks, I think. But we all know it's Apollo. Apollo sounds right. It feels right because that is the name which has been used over and over and over in media since the Romans, you know, did all their ancient Greek stuff. It's the Roman names which feel more authentic to us because those are the ones we're used to, even though that those names only came into use like, you know, hundreds of years after the collapse of the civilizations which produced these characters. I do agree with a lot of the points that Cinzia makes though in her video, like the Viking ships, the Northern European forests, it's all pretty jarring. Also the color, she talks about how it looks so dark, and that just feels out of character for the Odyssey because the Odyssey, she says, is very colorful, and I completely agree with this. She says that the Iliad is the one which feels more like it's one monotonous color throughout, and that the Odyssey is like kind of a more colorful story because he's traveling around and going places and seeing new creatures and peoples and cultures and just going from island to island, right? And I would agree, but I would also, as an Iliad stan, add like a kind of a little bit more to that metaphor. I would say the Iliad is like one, you know, really complex textured color that you can put on your wall and just stare at it every single day and see something new. Whereas the Odyssey is like a bunch of different colors, which are more kind of immediately distracting, but also easier to get your head around, I guess. Like, oh, there's the Cyclops, there's Circe, there's the Sirens, you know what I mean? And I think this gets to the heart of why I think making a film of the Odyssey, like the full Odyssey, would be very difficult today. The French got around it, I think, with The Return, which I haven't seen yet, but they, you know, they just have one focused part of the story, which is his return, which is kind of like a Greek tragedy. You know, they just focus on one part of the myth and like explore that. Why it's difficult to make an epic of the whole thing is because the Odyssey is just such a familiar story, and that makes me think, is it so bad that Christopher Nolan's trailer actually looks so unfamiliar to us? Like for me, I do think the trailer looks pretty awful, like not gonna lie here, you know. But if someone was gonna make an action epic Hollywood, you know, extravaganza version of the Odyssey, maybe this is the way to do it. Like lean into the sci-fi armor, you know, copy Dune for all I care. If it makes me think of the Odyssey in a way that I haven't already thought of the Odyssey, then that actually would be pretty cool, I think. Personally, the last thing I would want to see is a sort of, you know, quote unquote authentic, typical swords and sandals, Hollywood, ancient Greek epic. If we want to see that, we can just go back to the 1960s and watch the Ray Harryhausen films. So to sum up, does it look like Christopher Nolan is parodying himself at this point? Yes. Is the movie going to be bad? Probably. Are we going to get an engaging new version of an old story that's going to be an interesting talking point? Maybe. Maybe. So while I had extremely low expectations when I first heard that this director and this cast were going to do a filmic retelling of the Odyssey, the trailer, while looking pretty dire, has actually lifted my hopes slightly out of the abyss. So I'm conflicted now, but I suppose pleasantly conflicted in a way, like conflicted in the right direction. So what do you think? Are you excited about the trailer? Does it look really silly to you? Do you think Matt Damon is a good actor? All these things are interesting to me, so please write them down in the comments below. Who knows? Maybe he's gonna like pull a talented Mr. Ripley on us or something like that. I don't know. I'm definitely gonna go see it and talk about it when it comes out. But for now, let's chat in the comments, and I'll catch you in the next video for my 2025 best of business. Bye.